Milo, join me.
They come from a dying world. They drift through the universe, pushed on by the solar winds. They adapt, and they survive. The function of all life is survival. Sleep, sleep, sleep. From deep space, sleep. The seed is planted. Sleep, sleep. Terror grows.
Matthew! Matthew! Matthew!
Like the others.
Elizabeth, wake up! Get you when you sleep. Sit up!
Invasion of the body snatchers.
It's got no detail, no character. It's unformed.
All of a sudden, they're growing like parasites. Is it contagious? People are being duplicated.
How do you know my name? I didn't tell you my name.
I can't find anything in here that looks like a body. My side's nosebleed.
It looked right at me.
You're looking at it as if it was human. It was not human.
Now, the classic fear begins to grow
We're being cornered.
in a modern masterpiece of science fiction.
They're barricading the street.
Invasion of the body snatchers.
Get down!
Starring Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Leonard Nimoy. Invasion of the body snatchers. From deep space, the seed is planted. Terror grows.
Okay, welcome to Movie Night Extravaganza, episode 42. We Snatching Bodies. Name of the episode. We are joined by a prolific panel to talk about snatching bodies. I think 3 out of 4 of us have already been snatched, and I think it's going to be up to you to figure out by the end which one of those 4 it is. Definitely not me. Definitely not me. I totally have emotions. Definitely not me. Anyway, I'm joined by my 2 wonderful co-hosts, J. Andrew World, prolific cartoonist, illustrator, drawing artiste extraordinaire, and makes excellent capers. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. I just love the fact that bagpipes are the sound of aliens.
I mean, they're not wrong.
Everybody knows it.
Well,
We're
yeah.
talking about it more and more.
All right, Conan Neutron, season 2 co-host, host of Protonic Reversal, and of course, frontman, rock star extraordinaire for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. How's it going?
Really good, man. I'm very excited to see who will get shot in the face when they are found out to be a body snatcher later on, and maybe crushed underneath the boot heel of our protagonist. It's gonna be a fun show.
Yeah, at least one person will be, or 3 people will be. Who knows? Who really,
Yeah, we would never promise such a thing and not deliver. Not on this show. That's other shows, maybe.
And of course, frequent guest, Twitch star, just got off of a 12-hour subathon, was just trying to figure out what the fuck that meant. All 3 of us joined Twitch within the last month. Kristina Oaks, aka Kristina.
Tonight, I am Olive the Other Reindeer because this film was released during the holiday season, so I thought, why not get a little festive?
Yeah. An interesting thing about this film is that it kind of feels like it's almost like back to back also with Alien, because this movie is obviously 1978, Alien's 1979. Veronica Cartwright is in both movies, and
Sci-fi princess.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she is.
Somehow. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it would feel like to fucking act in both those movies, and she has like a pivotal role in both of them. I have no idea like how that must be like a crazy, because it's kind of the beginning of this level of the sci-fi genre, I'd say. So this alien side of it. I mean, obviously there was a lot of alien movies in the 50s, 60s. It's not like a new thing by any stretch of the imagination, but like I think those are two movies that kind of create like a pivotal setup for sci-fi from there on out.
Yeah, especially considering the time period, like in the 70s, where there was a lot of like exploitation films, adult films. There was just a lot of different genres that were kind of like happening in the 70s. And I feel like on top of that, there was a bit of a nostalgia wave of the 50s happening in the 70s with like shows like Happy Days. You had a lot of singers like remaking like 50s hits. You had musicals like Grease become movies. So it almost felt like this remake, because it is a remake of the 1956 film, that it kind of fits perfectly with the ending of a nostalgia wave of the 50s happening, but with the birth of sci-fi becoming pretty popular into the 80s.
Yeah.
And the modern era. Yeah, exactly.
And I wouldn't call it the end. I'm sorry, Conan.
No,
but I wouldn't call it the end of the nostalgia wave, because after that we still had a lot of nostalgia, including like Back to the Future.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But like the nostalgia wave just kind of continued on too, because like in the 80s we were looking back at the 60s and the 90s. We were looking back at the 70s, so on and so forth. Now we've just been looking back at the 80s, and I think we're just now starting to look back at the 90s.
I think the 80s are now like the permanent approved nostalgia, but only 80s pop things, which is
for
very
like millennials.
Weird. Yeah, like it's been that way for like 20 years. It's like I keep waiting for it to like, and then there's, I mean, I can speak personally and say that there's some like noise rock fetishism for the 90s, because that was such a great period for that kind of music, but like in a way that just doesn't lend any credulity to reality, because it's like you have people that think like bands like Carp were as big as Smashing Pumpkins, and I was like, I assure you that was never the case. And it's interesting to me that like this is whether or not the nostalgia still existed in the 80s, and it did certainly, but like I think there was a big sea change in how people viewed science fiction, and sort of being like, oh well, that is now definitively over though. Like however, whether you want to go back to it or run away from it, like that is definitively over. And it took until like the 70s for that to happen. But then you have like Morning America and all this Ronald Reagan BS.
Friend of show, Ronald Reagan. Frequent collaborator.
Which comes back to, trying to reestablish those values, but that becomes like people's whole identity and things like that, where then it turns into, all of the hippies basically completely selling out and becoming yuppies, and greed is good, et cetera, et cetera. But I think a lot of that it's right around this era. It's right around this era, and right around honestly, this movie.
And I think too, this film is like a great example of that moment of where hippieism ended, because you have a generation, basically like the millennials are now, in their 30s, in the pushing 40. With the elder millennials, and here you have the kids who grew up in the 60s. Now at the end of the 70s, they're in their 30s, pushing 40. Remember, like they grew up saying things like, don't trust anybody over 30. So once that post Watergate, paranoia kind of crept in. That's kind of like what this movie is almost like the fear of a generation becoming an adult.
Well, and if I may, just to tag that, because I think you're dead on, is that it's the who even are you, man? You look like the guy I used to know, but you don't act like him. Like, come on, are gonna be any more apparent?
Yeah. Well, at the same time, also, I think the idea of kind of linking these two decades, the 50s and the 70s, with that feeling of paranoia. I mean, the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers is obviously kind of built around McCarthyite paranoia, the idea that kind of anybody could turn into a communist, and that could be like baked into your blood almost, and the fear that, you know, around the corner the Russians are creeping in, and even
Like
somebody
that's such a bad thing.
No, but even somebody you know could turn out to just be like a, you know, some kind of spy. Like there's constant shows during that whole time period that are like, so I married a Russian spy, or like, you know, all of these different and there's exploitation films about it, and people being double agents, and McCarthy obviously being like, well, our government's kind of been infiltrated by Russians or by communists, or, you know, so I think that this movie kind of comes at a very different moment of paranoia, which is that post Watergate, post CIA hearings, I mean, we were talking in the chat about MK Ultra, but also like, you know, the idea that which makes it really funny that Donald Sutherland's in both of these movies, but, you know, the idea that JFK got assassinated by the CIA. It's interesting that in this movie, Donald Sutherland's character is obviously like, nothing's a conspiracy. I could just keep calling the police and eventually they'll show up. And then in that movie, he's obviously, you know, Mr. X. That's like, I'm the guy that was in the CIA that was working with, or, you know, working for the Joint Chiefs of Staff that, you know, quit. And I know all the secrets about it. And so it's interesting that he plays in both of those movies, because it seems like he's an actor that's actually very engaged with how the movies themselves are made, which I don't think every actor really is. Like, I think he chooses these projects based on like politics and like, you know, the script, instead of kind of choosing them based on like, well, I got offered a role. It seems like he's very ready to take on controversial projects. This movie also comes out the same year as another movie we recently talked about, Dawn of the Dead, which has a very similar theme of kind of this idea of you know, individuality and consumerism, and like, you know, as the 80s quickly approaches and malls are like popping up everywhere, and, you know, your consumer identity kind of takes over. So I think that that's another thing they're playing with. But I want to start with this clip. This is talking about the writing of this and how the first movie is actually connected. The first Invasion of the Body Snatchers is connected to this one because Kevin McCarthy. It's funny that his name was also McCarthy. I don't think that was a purposeful choice, but when he runs away at the end of the first one, they envisioned it that his role in this, when he hits the car and he's like, they're coming, and he's the one that gets hit and like dies, you know, in front of them. They envisioned that as kind of almost like a sequel moment that bridges the gap.
It's one of the cooler kind of like, let's do the cameo from someone from the earlier versions that I can think of. Because if you know, you're like,
this and Superman. Superman in 1978 also did the same thing with the Lois actress who played Lois Lane in the serials, played Lois Lane's mother on the train, or grandmother, you know, telling her to put away the Superman comic.
But I think this one's better because it's like, you know,
no, this one's funnier, absolutely.
Right? Like, yeah, it's like, oh, he got away, but like, oh yeah, here he is, like, and it's been like 20 years, and he's still trying to like haul ass away from these motherfuckers, and they're not. And they're gonna get him got, you know.
They envision it as him running from town to town too, because, you know, the original movie is kind of in a more rural area. And this is
which I want to talk about. That's I think very important, and as the I think the only person from the Bay Area, right, that I want to speak to it at length. But one thing I do want to say too, I love how Mr. Sutherland is like completely willing to accept that there's alien pod people, but not that the police aren't acting in their best interest. It's
by the way, that was literally my Letterboxd review.
Was it?
I was like,
how very white of him.
No, but I was like, it takes him literally 5 seconds to accept the fact that pod people are there and they're duplicating everybody. But it takes him an hour and 15 minutes, because I waited for the moment that he was like, you know, he's on the phone and he's like, maybe the police are in on it, and realizes that's an hour and 15 minutes into the movie.
Yeah. Welcome to the party, pal.
And then he's like, let me get the federal government involved, which is Jeff Goldblum's very funny line where he's like, the CIA, the FBI, they're all in on it. Which
young hot Jeff Goldblum.
Well, I think Jeff Goldblum honestly was hotter in the 90s. I think he filled out. Jeff Goldblum was like the first guy I ever had a crush on, to be honest. I just remember, I don't remember what movie it was, but I was like, you know what?
Jurassic Park? The Fly?
It might have, well, it was his Jurassic Park era, but I watched a bunch of Jeff Goldblum movies, I think, like at the same time. And I remember like the first man crush I ever had was like as a teenager being like, you know, Jeff Goldblum looks pretty good here.
That's how I felt about Aubrey Plaza.
Is this his first? It's an early role. Is it his first role? It's like one.
I thought The Fly was, but I might be wrong about that.
No, The Fly came out in the 80s.
Fly is like
Oh.
way later.
Yeah,
This probably was one of his first films.
Yeah, probably one of his first starring roles, but he was in Death Wish in 1974, which he plays one of the rapists, which is not a fun scene to watch at all. But he's wearing a stupid
very
hat.
out of character for Jeff Goldblum.
That might have been the movie that I was thinking of. With I remember like reading his filmography, and I haven't seen Death Wish and I haven't seen The Fly, but I remember reading through it, and yeah, it was the rapist scene. I think I've seen that.
The
scene.
Fly is a classic. Death Wish is interesting. Like there's a conversation to be had around that movie, but it's a hard watch. And Death Wish 2 is just Death Wish 2 has like nothing really redeeming about it except Lawrence Fishburne maybe and his glasses.
Yeah,
Death Wish 3, however, is classic.
I never did a deep dive on the Death Wish discography necessarily, but I will say I agree. The Fly is essential and classic, and
yeah,
pretty rad. But anyway, Forrest, you wanted to play something, maybe?
Yes, before I go into Death Wish 4.
Yeah, please, quickly.
The Finney book, I think, is popular through the years because it plays on a fear that we all have, that people around us are turning secretly on us behind our backs. And if we close our eyes, they'll get us. And that plays out over decades because we're always afraid of somebody.
We started out with the same small city idea that was in Jack Finney's novel, which really was someplace north of here.
And that was very difficult because it seemed like the world was somewhere else. And here we were in the boondocks, thinking about, well, what are even the locations? Where do people live?
And then we sort of felt that as time went on, 20 years had passed really since that film was made, that the real paranoia was starting to lurk more and more in big cities. We decided, let's see what we can do with paranoia coming to a big city. And the basic thing that came to me probably when I was talking with Kevin McCarthy was to say, well, how can I get Kevin into this movie? Let's just suppose that he had left the last movie where he wanted to leave it, which is running out of the small town saying they're here. And let's just suppose that he ran for 20 years trying to spread the word. The British are coming, the pods are coming, whatever it was.
Lock the door. Lock the door.
They're coming! They're coming! Help! Help! They're coming! They're coming! Listen to me! Listen! Help me! You're next, please! Please! You're next! We're in danger! Please, listen to me! Something terrible! Please! You're next! Here they are! They're already here! Come! You're next! They're coming! They're coming!
Must have done something.
Hell yeah.
I love that gasp. Like that gasp is everything right there. It's just amazing.
Who doesn't
Chaos in the city, fun.
Well, and yeah, so I guess this is going to be a good time, Andy, to say that as someone who lived the majority of my life in the Bay Area, a great movie is even greater always when it features the Bay Area, a la Vertigo. And I think Invasion of the Body Snatchers does so in a really good way. That it does not do like some other movies do, like where it's like there's one scene on one side of town and one scene 40 minutes on the other side of town. You're like, no, they didn't just round a corner and do that. I could point out movies that do that, but it'll be distracting. But I think it actually adds to the vibe because if you think about San Francisco, especially around this time, city in transition, but also still considered this bastion for freaks, nerds, and weirdos, but kind of beginning to transition. Harvey Milk, right? Mm-hmm. Dianne Feinstein's eventual ascendancy after Moscone. This is a very poignant time for politics where unfortunately the forces that maybe we wouldn't have been aligned with kind of won. Now I was real busy being one when this came out. So I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. You didn't have much time to hang out.
Did do a lot of analysis as it turns out. Yeah. But I think there's no better place that you could put. I mean, the classic thing would be to set in New York, right? That would have been the classic thing to do. And I like the decision to do it in San Francisco because I think it works better for this film, especially because of culturally.
Yeah, but I agree. I think that it's an interesting transitional period, I think, in general, too. And, as you guys were mentioning earlier in the conversation with it being kind of the end of this hippie era too. And I mean, you know, San Francisco is kind of the focal point for that, right? Like it's kind of where people think, oh well, like where am I going to go as some like just random hippie person? I'll just take off for California, end up in San Francisco, and you know, I think it's an interesting like that whole new age culture kind of has always fascinated me because there's like an obsession with the self, right? And I feel like as any kind of idea about collectivism or like any kind of collective identity kind of slips away, everyone kind of, as Adam Curtis says, and I've referenced this 1,000 fucking times on the show, but when he says they retreated into themselves in you know, hypernormalization, it's like this retreat into, you know, instead of actually having some kind of radical politics, instead of having ideas that can change the world, suddenly I can change myself, and by changing myself I can change the world. And that's like the first that's one of the first thoughts I think that become like a collective turn towards neoliberalism. And I know Andy wanted to you know, have his neoliberal theory about this movie, but I do think that plays a really big role because you know, it's the same people I think that we think of as kind of the new left, right? Like the hippies and the people that, you know, opposed the Vietnam War, and kind of in the process of opposing the Vietnam War realized that they had a lot in common with other young people that were like libertarians or civil libertarians or like different ideologies that, you know, didn't share any of the same economic goals. And suddenly they kind of had given everything up, and the Vietnam War ends, and all they really have left is like, how can I radically change myself? And by radically changing myself, I'm changing the world around me, which is not true.
Which is not true at all. But there also, if I may, and I know I'm already talking quite a bit more than normal, but the important thing to remember is this is also the dawn of punk rock too. Like literally when this came out, the Dead Kennedys were about a year and a half old, right? Flippers starting, the Avengers, and like the idea that they're being like Jeff Goldblum's character is a perfectly emblematic person who's like probably going to be a punk. Like he's going to be down at, you know, Mojave Gardens or whatever to go see the punk rock shows because he's
not after he gets snatched.
Going to the I'm going to get to the punk rock shows and
right. Like you could totally see like a deleted scene where he's hanging out with Jello Biafra around there, like, you know, talking about, you know.
I'm so mad that I just thought of let's open up the pits.
but the thing is, what we must remember too is like that era of American punk rock began as a reaction to all the things you're talking about for us, like basically what would eventually become the commodification and complete betrayal of like the hippie values and the eventual, you know, greed is good selling out aspects that, you know, certainly there were bastions of those folks that didn't do that, but culturally, like you know, what does Hunter S. Thompson say? The wave crashed back, right? Something along those lines. Like, and I think that's important to note that this is one of the reasons why this is like a generational change for movie making. It's also a generational change of generations and mindsets, and coming from that, you know, floor up, build your own, you know, become your own media, build your own artifices, and don't trust like anything else to do anything other than profit for itself. And that's a lot of things to put on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I know, but I think it does a great job of just low key digging into all that while not being like, you know, one of my favorite movies of all time is Network. And that's definitely a, hey, stupid, womp, here it comes, you know, and it's beautiful because of that. But this does the same things, but very surreptitiously.
Yeah, I also love the fact that like everybody, like from the start of the movie, people are just running around in the background acting weird from jump. I mean, you got Robert Duvall as the priest on the swing right at the beginning.
Yeah, a little cameo, you know.
Yeah. He was friends with the director and was just happened to be on set that day. And they're like, well, it's a horror movie. You're a priest. And that's where the whole scene came from. But like I love that because it does create this sense of paranoia. But also like you know, I was thinking because I watched this movie earlier this year, and when we were debating whether we're going to do this Body Snatchers or the original, and I pushed for this one. It's because I was when I saw this, I immediately was thinking, you know, it like struck me like this is that kind of you know, that fear of bringing in neoliberalism, because you know nobody wanted neoliberalism, but like we didn't really have a choice.
There were a few people that
I mean Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, no
Jimmy Carter gets okay.
No, Jimmy Carter.
No. I don't want to get into it. No. We're not doing this. Nope.
Have you ever read anything
he's not a neoliberal, but anyway, move on.
Jimmy Carter was 100% neoliberal.
Yeah,
he invented the post presidency though, so that's
I mean,
I think Jimmy Carter is the one. The one post president that's redeemed himself.
Yeah, you can separate like his presidency from who he is today. Like they are not the same person, and I will fully admit that.
Same thing with Al Gore, although he never actually got elected. But yeah.
Even though he did win.
Yeah, even though he did win. Yes.
No.
I actually got body snatched when I was watching An Inconvenient Truth. That's when they got me.
You fell asleep, didn't you?
I did. Well, all right. To be fair, I was very young. My dad. We've had this conversation on the show before, but my dad does green architecture, and that's like so he does like ecologically sustainable architecture. So when An Inconvenient Truth came out, and I was younger, he had me go see it like 5 different times. And the one time I remember seeing it with him, we were in Maine, and there was this really cool like tiny independent theater. But the thing that they did to fuck things up is that they had these really
little
comfy
flowers.
No, so they had these really comfy like couches. Instead of watching a movie on like theater seats or whatever, you could like lounge back on these big couches. And now everywhere has that, but like this is back when they didn't, when they just had the normal theater seats in most places. And like I remember just lying back on this couch and then falling asleep watching An Inconvenient Truth, and my dad being like, "You missed the whole thing. You missed the whole thing."
I'm surprised they didn't take you to see Garbage Warrior, the documentary about the guy who invented Earthships.
I feel like he didn't see that, but he definitely did see
the. He needs to see Garbage Warrior.
What I find interesting though is the whole like plant situation and how like you can't fall asleep. I'm like, how many shows have I been on for this podcast where we talk about dreams?
Oh, only shows where they have the line.
I was gonna say apparently all of them. Yes.
Don't sleep.
The ones you've been on are Nightmare on Elm Street. Was the first one you were on.
The Blue Velvet,
and then this. So it's like every single one are movies that involve dreams, not falling asleep.
You know what's funny though is remember that one amazing movie called The Happening with Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel?
Oh yeah,
I remember it happened.
Every time I'm like, when the idea of like plants releasing toxins into the world and like controlling people or killing people, I'm like, how many times has this been done? Because when I was watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers for the first time in a long time, I'm like, this like plant thing is kind of like been done before, but yeah.
I gotta say though, nobody's done a plant invasion like Mark Wahlberg's performance in that movie. Like that, I'm gonna speak just like this the entire film.
Oh God!
It's also funny.
There are 4 versions of this movie, right? I mean,
yes.
Which I think we can probably all agree that this is by far the best one, right?
Oh yeah. Don't talk about
Nicole
Kidman and Daniel Craig.
Yeah. I actually have soft spots for both those folks, but that is an awful movie. It's not. It has some of the worst special effects too. Like, not that there isn't plenty of other things for it to be awful about, but I mean, practical effects here are generally king, even when they're bad, and they're especially good here. Like, it's creepy. I don't want to jump ahead, but like the whole birthing like pod scene, like, oh my God, how many times have I seen this movie? And I was like, ugh, that's nasty.
Yep. I mean, practical effects are just so, in my opinion, they're more realistic. I mean, you guys talked about Alien. We're going to be talking about Aliens later, and just the new Alien movies.
They're not
all CGI now, and it's just not scary. The aliens, they're just not scary. They're not
lube. It's not wet enough.
I mean, like I think Screamers was kind of smart whenever they used the CG in that movie, and I wish more movies were kind of smart like that. Even though the CG looks terrible in that film because it's 1995, but they kept it for very short cuts. But the bottom line is, it's like you can use CG as long as you're smart about it. And the problem is they
don't use it as a crutch necessarily.
Yeah,
that's like the key. Yeah,
it's like, oh, we can't do this. We'll just have a quick cut where we, you can see like this guy saw it in half. Which makes sense.
You're reminding me of the Lawnmower Man was on cable the other day, and I turned it on, and I was like, "Oh my God, these are the worst. These special effects are like worse than like the worst video game."
Green screen, picket fences.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
This movie also has the guy that got spliced with the dog that's sitting outside that
the
banjo and
the busker in the park. Yeah.
And so, so this movie kind of has some interesting. I mean, like, it's interesting. I just watching it in the pandemic. With the whole idea of like the mRNA vaccines and like, which, I mean, not to say that they don't work, but like the conspiracy aspect of people being like, they're just going to splice genes now and they're going to do something to us. And it's interesting to hear Veronica Cartwright's character, where she says, hold on, I wrote it down, but she's like, oh, they could get into our systems and start screwing up our genes like DNA, recombining us, changing us. And I remember.
You heard of this thing called Q? No.
Yeah.
but it's like, I like the fact that when it's a movie like this, right, and they start talking about conspiracy theories, it's always the characters aren't necessarily understanding what the conspiracy theory really is in the moment. And I like movies where they kind of spitball. So it's like, like you have the characters kind of realistically sitting around being like, well, it could be that these are aliens and they've come down from space and the pods are the aliens. And then like, Jeff Goldblum's like, really, like flower aliens, like, and then they're like, oh, well, I didn't know that, they're like, why does it always have to be metal ships? And he's like, I never thought it was metal
flowers.
Ships. Yeah. So it's like all of these different, you guys ever read Dr. Seuss? Like, Jesus, no, but Horton Hears a Who. No, but so I like the spitballing aspect of it, where, because I think that a lot of the 70s political thrillers or, the different kind of, it's always like an aesthetic, right? Like something's off and you don't know why. And everybody could be in on it. You know what I mean? And it makes sense because, the CIA hearings, like all of these different, trust in systems kind of evaporates. And we talked about that with Eileen Jones a few weeks ago, where we talked about kind of neo-noir, which I think that the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers is famous for having like, integrating parts of noir filmmaking into a sci-fi film. And so you kind of have this destruction of the idea of institutions and the idea of like trust in different places. And having Donald Sutherland is kind of the most bureaucratic of the characters, right? Like he's the health inspector guy. He trusts the police are going to come. He trusts that his friend at the Justice Department is going to come save him. And then over time, you realize that like these institutions have all eroded away and everyone's kind of become pod people and nobody's coming to save you. And it's an interesting, I mean, it's a very realistic, I think, erosion of that, because it's not like it all happens at once. And it's not like every character is Jeff Goldblum and they're all like the CIA is in on it, the FBI is in on it from the jump. They don't trust anybody. It's that these characters all have different levels of trust. And then I think
it wouldn't be as effective if it was, because half the thing is sort of like nobody's super confident in like what's happening. They know something's up, and then it's kind of conflicting opinions, but everyone knows something is up. So that's what makes it interesting. What makes it more effective as a kind of that style of movie is that I think personally.
I'm really mad that this is my friend Zach that comments on our show a lot. That like, but I'm really mad that I just read this as Dave Rubin. It was like, if you think about it, the woke agenda really wants to put you to sleep and to confiscate your freedoms and individuality, just like the body snatchers.
I know. My favorite thing with the conspiracy theories is whenever she says it's just like when the aliens came down and had sex with the monkeys, and just like and that actually there's a song by Dan Byrne, and if you don't know Dan Byrne, but you know the movie Walk the Line, he wrote the music for that movie. A lot of the lyrics. And I saw him back in '97. He got an entire hillside of people, thousands of people, singing "Aliens came, they fucked the monkeys, they fucked the monkeys," and they got booted from that folk festival, never to return.
Walk Hard, not Walk the Line. Walk the Line.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Yes, Walk Hard. My bad. The Dewey Cox story.
Yeah, which I mentioned. Was it? Wait, what must have been Crossroads? We were talking about that, right?
Yeah, it was very Crossroads. I was gonna say no one even remembers which show is which at this point.
Yeah, it's like that time we did the thing with the stuff. Remember when we did that? That was great.
You and I did This Is Revolution last week. We did Kenzo. We did our new Sabbath Cypher show, which watch that on Saturdays. We talked about well, I went on Meet the Left, so I've been on like 3 different shows in the last week on top of this one. But we actually talked about Kristina's MK Ultra stuff on Meet the Left the other day. Which
yes, I highly recommend Bailey Sarian's Dark History podcast, because we covered Rosewood Massacre. We talked about the history of birth control and how they experimented on Puerto Rican women And now the fertility rate is like down by 11%. Like we talked about a whole bunch of stuff on my stream. Most of it's like dark stuff, but with an entertainment aspect to it, so it doesn't seem very overwhelming because it can't get overwhelming.
Well, speaking of an entertainment aspect, bringing it back to Body Snatchers.
Let's get entertaining.
No. I have this is the director talking about and this is from like a making of thing from the DVD extras, talking about kind of the more new age aspects of it, and Leonard Nimoy's character as kind of a new age therapist.
Philip Kaufman, by the way, the director, who also did The Right Stuff, which is incredible, and like he's much more well known for that movie, and unfortunately for good reason because that movie kills. But like, I think this is probably a more surreptitious. I just want to name them because I think those are great movies, and people don't really be like, "Oh, is he related to Charlie Kaufman?" No, he's not related to Charlie Kaufman. That I'm aware. Maybe he is actually. I don't know.
Also, he and his
Probably
wife
not.
both make he and his wife Rose both make cameos in Invasion of the Body Snatchers when they're in the bookstore listening to Leonard Nimoy. So it makes it interesting that they're kind of talking this through in this making of documentary. But I think that it's I don't know. I find the new age stuff fascinating because my parents both kind of had gotten into like a more new age understanding of things, and I don't think that's always a bad thing. But like, you know, as people kind of did self exploration, I think that it kind of subverted the idea of radical politics altogether, and people that might have been more subject to kind of talking about class, or people that might have been more subject to talking about like materialist analysis, suddenly we're talking about, you know, a retreat into themselves. So this is that clip.
Lived in San Francisco, and you know, it's my favorite city. Really, my favorite city in the world.
And it seemed like the right place. You know, it had that kind of San Francisco slightly offbeat quality, which the characters in the movie have. You know, Jeff Goldblum's a failed poet, and Kivin is a sort of goofy psychologist who writes self-help books and things. You know, it all had a kind of nice San Francisco air to it.
The context of the movie was in a kind of a feel-good therapy atmosphere where hugging and explaining away all your problems as sort of psychological projections of these inner things, all that stuff was very current at the time.
It was a time when we still believed, sort of, that we could affect something in this country.
We'd grown so disillusioned with the larger society around us, with the treachery of the government, with things that just weren't working right, that this big inward look started taking place. The me generation, a huge cliche of pop culture, but nevertheless, people were closing off. Under sort of cover of we're all reaching out to find out who we are and to be one kind of, you know, one Earth, one planet. But to get there, you have this sense of, I got to find out who I am first. I've got to become very self-centered, very inward directed and looking in.
1978, sort of the end of a kind of hippie era, you know, there was still, you know, a residue of that, but there were also, as exemplified by Leonard Nimoy, the kind of pop psychologists who were telling everybody to relax, everything's going to be okay, take it easy. In a sense, trying to humanize people by dehumanizing them in some way. He did a lot of, you know, little variations on that character.
Leonard Nimoy, he was terrific. He was a lot of fun, and of course, coming off of, you know, Star Trek, which he had been on, and that's automatically what you think.
There's a little bit of the sternness of Spock in there, but there's that softness that Leonard added of the Birkenstock sandals and the arm pads and, you know, little thing he wears on his hand and the soft tailoring and the soothing voice. You know, he turned into a really interesting character. The last person you might think would become a pod becomes one of the early pods.
Don't be trapped by old concepts. Matthew, you're evolving into a new life form.
That's right. A sideburn life form. One of us. One of us.
No, there's also kind of I really like that there's to the character of at least in that scene, right? Like that don't get trapped by old concepts. There's like a very postmodernist aspect to that, which is kind of really funny, like looking at, you know, postmodernism as kind of a an ideology that really. And I remember we talked about this with A Woman Under the Influence and whether that was kind of a postmodernist film, and Cassavetes, and we had that whole conversation. So it's interesting to kind of have Leonard Nimoy as he's basically telling Donald Sutherland's character that, like, you know, he's going to be absorbed into the pod as he's going to become one of them. He's like, oh, don't be so wrapped up in old concepts. He's kind of a postmodernist villain, which is kind of a fascinating way to do it, because I think a lot of times when you apply postmodernism to everyday life, it kind of becomes bullshit. So having his character kind of literally kind of saying that by being like, listen, old concepts are dead, we're evolving, but it's like, yeah, we're evolving into fucking aliens. So yeah.
I first saw this movie when I was 5, and I thought that he was playing Dr. Spock in this movie. Yeah. I watched a lot of really weird movies I shouldn't have when I was young.
Same. I was like 7 watching Alien and Aliens thinking, ooh, chest burster scene. But you know what's interesting though about like this new age stuff? It's the new age hippie types who turn into boomers who have gotten sucked into all the weird batshit conspiracy theories of today.
Class too.
Like, I just don't understand like how it's possible that they can believe all this shit.
It's on Facebook.
Well, I mean,
that's literally it. It's on Facebook.
One thing that's fascinating to me about like kind of the boomer generation and the clash they kind of had with like the greatest generation, the World War II generation, like, or their parents, grandparents, like the generational class kind of takes over for the idea of class warfare. Like the idea that kind of anything can change materially between the classes suddenly becomes old men are sending you to war, which is like the thing that they care the most about in the moment. Don't trust anybody over 30. And corporations are perfectly fine taking that messaging over. Corporations are perfectly fine taking over advertising, like, oh, we're something hip, we're something cool, we're something for you, rather than a more, I mean, no corporation will ever be comfortable talking about class conflicts. Like, so as the new left kind of takes over as a force during the boomer thing, and they start kind of giving away things and not really understanding that libertarians don't have anything in common with socialists or even like democratic socialists, like that are rejecting kind of the idea of what they see as kind of a Stalinist like communism, and are kind of moving towards the the more democratic socialist definition of that, or they're giving things away like piece by piece. You know what I mean? And the generational clash kind of takes over for the class conflict that could exist. I don't know. I think I was really sick the other day with this ear infection, and that was going through my mind. Like I was thinking about this, and I was like trying to and like I I had like a Planet of the Apes almost like fever moment where I was trying to construct that, and I was thinking about that line, don't anybody third. It was like a long like dialogue in my head about how to say that, but I'm happy that it came back up in this, so I can talk about that.
I would love to hear everybody's thoughts, opinions, and theories on Leonard Nimoy's glove in this scene that doesn't seem to be related to much of anything, but is very unique looking. Do we know what kind of glove that is?
Yeah.
Well, he becomes Freddy Krueger a decade later. No.
There you go.
It's almost like an archery glove, except he's wearing it backwards.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, just thought I'd bring that up. Carry on.
You tell him to relax, and he's like, "See, I'm not even wearing my gloves correctly.
I'm not even wearing my weird sex glove."
I'm wearing. We're gonna see some feet here, but I'm wearing my Rudolph socks. So explain that.
Show him feet on stream.
Oh man,
I just have to.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just like it's relaxing to have your favorite appendage apparel when you're discussing, the imminent invasion by aliens. I don't know. Maybe.
You see, actually, the truth is that, blood flow is an interesting thing, right? And psychologically speaking, constricting the blood flow to your hands, actually, the rest of your body gets quite, no, I don't know. I can see that.
There probably was like some...
There's probably a YouTube video about this exact topic somewhere right now.
There you go. Look it up now. Let's see.
Or like a trend that we missed that happened in the 70s about that glove.
Yeah.
And we just don't know about it because we're just too young. because I was in Turkey when this movie came out.
That's a weird flex, but okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I was
Nobody else. I put it on Instagram. Everyone's like, "Ha ha!" I'm like, I'm legitimately asking, what manner of glove is this? I was like, that's hilarious.
The truth is that he was trying to show everyone he couldn't possibly be the pod person because if the glove doesn't fit, you must have quit.
All right, there we go. That's right. These are the jokes.
At least no one was wearing this ring.
Podcast. Forrest Miller, how's it going? Nice.
Well, there's a flex.
Cancel Forrest Miller story. Anti-glove.
I actually am anti-glove. I have circulation.
I'm sorry, I can't get you with a bigot.
I have Raynaud's phenomenon, which is like the circulation problem where your hands and your appendages get colder than the rest of your body, and the blood.
And that's why you can't wear a condom.
Yes. Sorry, I gotta hit it raw. I have Raynaud's.
Good, Andy.
Oh, gotta go.
No, so I don't even know where to go from there. I'll be honest.
Well, look, I can tag it and keep it going, but I'm not going to.
Get another clip to get us going. You got any more of those clips?
I do, but not that I'm trying to pull up just yet or pull out just yet.
But I mean, Kristina, do you agree that like this is a good atmosphere movie? Like this is all about like the atmosphere for me. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's just like there's like this eerie feeling that something is clearly wrong. Like, listen to the people. They are screaming. They are running. There is chaos in the city. There is insanity in the chat room. Like, just listen to the dude. Like, listen.
Yeah, there's like 7 parallel movies happening at the same time
like you can even make this be more than just a sci-fi film. Like there's thriller elements to it, there's clearly horror elements to it, but that's the beauty of sci-fi is that it takes just a little bit of all your favorite like horror genres and like puts it all together.
Yeah, you probably didn't expect as much mud bath content as is in this movie when you first started in. Maybe you did. I don't know what you expect, but
I also like how like in Alien they don't explain like the life cycle of the alien. In this movie they don't explain the life cycle of the pods. You kind of get it through watching each step. They're giving it to you like dribs and drabs, and then you finally see like the whole birthing scene, which is kind of horrific. With like those weird like Donald Sutherland fetus.
Well, all right. So I'll throw this in there about the mud baths. As this kind of idea about pop psychology takes over,
it helps your kind of circulation.
It helps my raw circulation. No, but as these ideas about like pop psychology take over, as these kind of retreat into the self, right? Like retreat into this like neoliberal idea of the individualist self being the thing that's life changing. I mean, mud baths are one of the things, right? Like it's self care. So kind of having like that's an atmosphere where people are at their most relaxed. It's an atmosphere where people
have you ever been to a spa, guys? It's great. We have tons of mud baths.
Can you read a book for apparently hours at a time when you're in it, like that one dude does?
That one guy also he's reading
I love reading. Fuck you.
He's reading When Worlds Collide, like the book. I think that so it's a
fitting.
No, but so it's kind of this idea of like self-care, and before we kind of hit this really kind of the worst form of it, which is now I think where there's like the Elizabeth Warren like self-care can take care of yourself, don't let that guy ghost you, and it somehow takes precedence over politics itself. But the 70s are kind of the start of that. It's kind of new age idea that somehow taking care of yourself can take care of the world, which is
so after Elizabeth Warren backed out of the race, you're saying she became a pod person.
Yeah. Well, no, Elizabeth Warren was always a pod person. She was the first one.
Okay.
She was a native, as they say.
Guys, come on. If there's any pod person in that race, it would have been Pete Buttigieg. We all know that. It's illegal for him to show emotion.
True that.
Did you know that Pete Buttigieg's dad was a Gramscian scholar and was friends with Richard Wolff?
Yeah, Cornel West used to babysit him.
Yeah.
Like how wild is that? You go from Cornel West babysitting you to like the most anti just like what kind of rebellion are you going through to become like your dream to be a middle manager?
Alex P. Keaton.
Well, Kamala Harris also, her father was also a Marxist, like academic. So
and do you know what his father's name is, or her father's name is? I'm sorry.
Donald Harris is
Donald J. Harris.
Middle name is John.
I actually don't remember what his
Donald
middle name
J.
is. but his middle initial is J, and that's just hilarious. So
That's the joke. Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I got the Trump reference, but no, but
Yes.
so it's kind of fascinating. Richard Wolff was really good friends with Pete Buttigieg's dad, and so Pete Buttigieg's dad was the person in charge of the Gramscian Society, which is the academics that translated the works of Gramsci, who is the Marxist, the Italian Marxist that came up with like the concept of hegemony. So it's kind of there were two separate centrist presidential candidates that were rebelling against Marxist academic parents Kamala Harris's dad is still alive and kind of disavowed her when she was running for president. Like, I don't know. What the fuck
it's actually Jasper. It's Donald Jasper Harris, but.
But yeah, imagine you're growing up with a Marxist as a parent. That's cool and all. And then you grow up to be a pod person. How boring.
People are talking about it more and more.
You heard it here. Pete Buttigieg. Pete Pod.
Exactly. It was actually, it's the post-credit scene of the Pete Buttigieg documentary, actually, as they reveal that.
I turned it off because I couldn't stand anymore.
Oh God, the fake burning was. Ooh.
I wouldn't watch those with borrowed eyes. By the way, there's no watch that shit.
Yeah, I felt really bad that they fucking did this, but Gab and Kitty for their new Final Girls, the second episode they watched the Pete Buttigieg documentary and talked about it. And like I was like, listen, you couldn't fucking pay me to do that.
Ray Bonner was like live tweeting it, and I'm like, wait, they actually have someone impersonating Bernie? What's happening here? Like, what are you watching?
I mean,
I did it so I could troll Buttigieg people.
Pete Buttigieg also wrote an essay when he was a high school student about how great Bernie Sanders is.
Yeah,
that I remember.
You can't tell me he's not a pod person.
It was because like all the other topics were taken. If you actually read into it, like that was the reasoning why. It's because like the other politicians you wanted to write about were already taken for this essay contest, and like hearing more about it, just like it's getting lamer and lamer. People, you should have just left it.
If I was Bernie, I would have just like relentlessly talked shit and be like, "Don't you have an essay to write about how great I am?" Fuck you.
Yeah.
Look. I'm angry. I know that dude's name, so I'm sorry I brought it up. Although I thought it was a reference. Let's move on. He's a pod person.
Pod, right? Pod Buttigieg. Right.
Exactly.
There we go.
All right. So
covered by Pod Save America. I'm sure. Go ahead.
Listen, this is they're gonna duplicate all podcasts, and we're gonna be stuck,
Exactly.
But anyway, this is another clip about the story that they were trying to tell. So this is the last one I have from this Invasion of the Body Snatchers making of. So let's try to get this conversation on track.
The idea of the pod became a symbol or a metaphor of the standardized thing that the culture was asking of us. It was asking us all to create a new mass culture, something that would work on the world scale. And in order to do that, you had to sacrifice some individuality. So you had to get squeezed down into some kind of a pod.
And that's one of the interesting paradox of the film is that these elements of individuality are sort of shunned by pods.
There's no need for hate now or love.
I love you, Matthew.
When I think about what might have inspired me or Phil or all of us to make this version, I don't think of science fiction because science fiction tended to be drifting toward big pyrotechnical effects and larger than life dangers and monsters and threats, and the budgets were going up. And we were really interested in a human story here.
Our Body Snatchers is really about, characters and developing that human thing. I always viewed it as sort of a tragic love story between Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, but also between a band of friends, all of whom in one way or another love each other.
There's a nice moment where Donald Sutherland has Elizabeth, the character Elizabeth, roll her eyes around in her head. And although it's a crazy thing, to him it proves she's not crazy.
If you're not crazy, you can do the thing with your eyes.
It didn't show it. That's like one of the best parts of the movie. It's so freaky. I love it.
It did, yeah, they didn't show it after that.
It's just the thing she does. It's like I can't even begin to impersonate.
It's just the thing that the actress was able to do. It makes me wonder. Like it makes me wonder where that. No, she does. Like they go like that. Like it is pretty crazy. But it makes me wonder where they thought of that, because was it just that she showed Donald Sutherland that she could do that, and then he's like, you should add this to the movie, or was it just kind of like what can you do? That's just what can you do? I need to ask you, what can you do? What's a unique?
Brooke Adams is like, I can do this. Oh,
You've
shit!
got the job.
You're in.
There are 6 other actresses, and they just looked at me blankly. You did that.
It's like Elizabeth Montgomery in the nose twitch.
Yes.
Which is not that difficult to do.
No, but she probably just thought of doing it and like, oh, yeah, that's your thing. That's your thing. You're known for
you
it.
literally have to like move your mouth. Like it's not really that difficult, guys. Girls are like doing this. I'm like, no.
Half woman, half rabbit.
Yeah, they were gonna give this role to Margot Kidder, and then Brooke Adams comes in with his eye thing. It's wild, you know.
Yeah.
But I love that it's not
when it comes
that
in,
big
they're
of a
like,
deal.
can you do any cool things with your tongue? And she's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, all right, I guess we'll give it to the eyes girl.
So do you think that Brooks Adams and Donald Sutherland's characters were having an affair in the movie?
He wanted to. No, she seemed devoted to the boyfriend, and he seemed like, as her boss, he was like, oh, your boyfriend's a dentist, he's lame as fuck. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's kind of just a lonely character and was flirting with her the whole movie. And I never got the vibe they were having an affair. I got the vibe that he wanted her to leave the boyfriend and get with him. And the whole movie, she's like, oh, my boyfriend's kind of a great guy. I live with him. And he's like sitting there at the end of the night, and he's like, God damn it, I should call her. But how can I get her to work at 7:30 a.m. so we can hang out for the rest of the day? He's doing that. He's nagging the boyfriend the beginning of it. He's, you know what I mean? He's being like, yeah, well, your boyfriend's fucking lame. Your boyfriend's fucking lame. And she's like, yeah, but you know, we usually hang out. And he's like, nah, your boyfriend's lame. Like, I got the feeling that he's just kind of trying to get her to leave him.
I like the best when he said, honey, you need to drop the zero and get with the hero. I think that was the best. Kristina, what do you think about all that?
I mean, I think you're right though. Like the hero to zero thing. I mean, I don't really think it's not like an Andrew Cuomo thing, you know, involved with his career or whatnot. But like, you know, like I'm CIA, I'm better than a dentist, whatever. But like trusting cops or whatever. But I don't think I mean, it's like what they said. It is kind of a bit of a love story, but like, there's no indication that something else was going on behind the scenes or between the sheets.
Well, I just, the whole movie, I got the feeling that he wanted something to happen behind the scenes, and she was
a little thirsty for it.
Yeah.
She
was flirting with him a little bit, but like, you know, the way that you flirt with like a coworker or something and don't really think about it as anything serious. And the whole movie, I was feeling like he wanted something serious, and then he's kind of like pulling back and stuff. Like,
honestly, I would though. I mean, it's Donald Sutherland. Why not?
Give that mustache a ride.
Do you think this movie has a direct connection to Ratatouille? Or
are we talking about Pete Buttigieg again?
No, well, the scene, no.
Well, I know there's a lot of references specifically to this version that have been made throughout history. Like even SpongeBob SquarePants did a whole episode about it with the jellyfish, and I'm like, I've seen this before.
No, the whole capers rat turd thing. I just kept thinking about Ratatouille, and like it would be really funny if the French restaurant had like a rat just making the food behind the scenes, and just like that, you know what I mean? Like accidentally got a rat turd in there, and he's like, "This is a caper. This is a rat turd." He leaves, and then fucking Ratatouille comes out. Mom, we got more food. I just, you know, all right, whatever. I thought it was funny.
It took years for that spin-off to occur.
I just think it's interesting.
Murdered.
I just think it's interesting that this specific version is like more famous than the original. It really shows that you can make a remake better than the original.
Yeah.
And how it's popped up in our pop culture throughout the decades. Like I forgot that there was an original Body Snatchers movie. Like that's how this movie has kind of like stood the test of time.
And to steal Conan's thunder with that idea, this is like the tainted love of body snatcher movies.
Well, I mean, think about so what else is there, right? Scarface, maybe, right? Like Scarface, like people don't realize that's a remake.
Yeah.
I would argue Battlestar Galactica. You know, that's not a movie, but people forget that it's even based on the 70s show a lot of times.
Yeah, well, the 70s show never really had a chance to
spread its wings,
isn't the Thing's a remake, right? Yeah.
And the Blob too, but I don't know if that's a better remake, in my opinion. I mean, the effects are interesting.
Yeah, the effects are better, but I agree.
But also too, their West Side Story, they're saying that this new remake directed by Steven Spielberg is actually better than the original. I'm like, yay, good, because getting Latin actors to get spray tans even though they're already have darker complexions is ridiculous in my opinion. Like why would Rita need a spray tan?
Is that why Steven Sondheim dropped dead?
No, he actually loves the remake. Like he actually loves it. I'm like, good, but still, like it's like movies like Body Snatchers. It shows that you can make remakes that are better than the originals. You just gotta do it right.
You gotta be inventive.
Yes,
I think that whether it's better or not better, or like I think that conversation is almost irrelevant. Is do you have something to say about the time period you're living in? And I think that the fact that I mean, like even when they talk about the remake after that, which I guess J.G. Michaels thinks is one of the best. I haven't seen it, but he thinks is one of the best versions of it. But like it is interesting that each time it gets remade, the question isn't really is this going to be better? It's going to be, do you have something to say about the political situation, the aesthetic of the community at large? And it feels like the 1990s one didn't really have something to say as much about that time period. So this movie kind of as a movie about Watergate paranoia, as a movie about kind of the lack of trust in institutions, this movie is kind of the creeping influence of material like neoliberalism and like which because if you read like David Harvey, anything by him, like
get ready, it's coming, that goddamn neoliberalism.
No, but like so David Harvey's history of like neoliberalism, like he wrote a bunch of stuff on that, and it's as much a kind of a psychological phenomenon and like an individualist phenomenon as it is a political one or an economic one. So part of the creeping influence of neoliberalism is like a psychological turn towards thinking of the individual, thinking of the self as more important than political. Thinking of the individual as more important than the collectivist or the material, like in the sense of like, the Marxist materialist idea. And this movie kind of, hits that right on the head. I don't necessarily think that they would put that in those words, but like the turn towards the self, the turn towards the individualist is as much a part of the groundwork of neoliberalism as the actual economic obsession with free markets, as the the obsession with consumerism. It kind of that psychological state where it's like even the most quote unquote radical people are thinking that there's some kind of radical self-transformation that they can make, or thinking about selling out as something good. The transformation to like hippies being yuppies it is, I think, as important in a lot of ways to our turn towards neoliberalism as anything else really is. So this movie kind of captures that perfectly, as does Dawn of the Dead.
And and I think that's where some of these movies actually don't work, when they don't have like that underlying like political messaging. Like what the fuck was the happening about? Was there really any like political underbelly that was? No, not really.
Nobody cared.
Yeah, exactly. So like when you have films like Dawn of the Dead, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, even with Aliens, you know, in the Alien franchise, you know, there's some like political underlining. And in my opinion, that's what makes a lot of
Don't give away your analysis just yet.
Oh, I know, I'm not. Don't worry. But I just think like this is what makes some of those sci-fi, like any type of film, works. If there's something that's more bigger, like just something that means more. Like there's more to this movie than
being able to speak about something that you can't normally speak about. Like if you speak about it directly, it gets weird.
They'll cancel if you can't speak about it. They won't let you.
Can I just say, Forrest, that for all the world, I thought you said the words psychological turd earlier, and I was like, did he get? No, he didn't say that. Damn it.
But yeah, like I said, like a lot of these films, they need to have some bigger messaging that you have to think about. It can't be just about alien pod people. There needs to be something bigger than that. Because it just, in my opinion, that just makes a lot of these movies better. Like it's not just your typical like monster movie.
Well, I think it means more. And it means that if it's a well-made film, that it will stick with society longer, and that will maybe have a larger impact than just like, hey, I saw this crazy ass movie the other day called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's like, oh wow, this is deeply affecting, and somehow in a way that I can't even quite articulate, it seems important too.
Yeah. That's why we watch David Lynch films too.
yeah, well, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
It's also like, you know, I mean, I think the culture and the zeitgeist, and I hate that fucking term. I don't know why. I just have always thought it was just stupid. But the zeitgeist and the aesthetic kind of matter to what's terrifying to people in the moment as much as anything else. If you have nothing to say about what's going on in the world, and it's just kind of, what can we kind of come up with that's terrifying? Like we talked about this a lot when we talked about Halloween, which is a really interesting example of it, because it was taking something that people weren't thinking about as scary, which is like suburbia, and saying like, isn't it terrifying if someone just kind of creeps into suburbia and starts killing people? Everybody leaves their doors unlocked. Everyone kind of leaves their houses open. Like, what if something that wasn't terrifying suddenly became terrifying? In the same way, though, I think that this kind of captures a feeling for the first hour and, you know, even like hour and a half of this movie, this feeling of unease where you don't quite know what's wrong. But you know that, you know, these things are happening. People are suddenly changing, and they're not quite like, even if you know that there's something going on with plants and kind of pods and everything else, like you're like, I don't quite know what this is. I don't quite know
slow process.
Yeah. And like
and I don't dread, and it's very effective.
Yeah. And there's kind of an unwillingness, I think, throughout this to, you know, admit that our institutions are failing us. And that's a very poignant, I think, statement for the 70s in particular, where suddenly you're realizing like, well, maybe the federal government's in it. Maybe the state government's in on it. Like maybe the city government's in on it. Maybe the police can help me. Maybe the police can't help me. Like, are they kind of taken over too? Is there a wider conspiracy? And the idea that, you know, I think that we kind of dismiss conspiracy theorists as kind of
now we do, because conspiracy theorists have become something totally different, right? And conspiracy theorists have become
from the beginning, the point of conspiracy theories as a concept was a CIA kind of psyop, where it was like, let's make it so that they're not going to believe that we're the people that are in charge. Let's just make these people sound crazy. So let's.
When has the CIA ever made a project like a pet project like work?
Well, the CIA is a deeply, I mean, especially at this time period, but people hadn't really realized it until this time period that like they were kind of just throwing darts at a board and hoping one of them would stick. Like it's everything from like mind control to like, how can we flood drugs into different communities? How can we, like, it's all these different ideas that are just all over the place. And they're like, hopefully we get enough money that one of these ideas really works. Like they would, I mean, how many assassination attempts did they have on Castro? Like, there were hundreds of assassination attempts on Castro. Some of them are fucking Looney Tunes ideas, where it's like, can we make an exploding cigar? Can we have somebody
or just like, all the umbrella, like, how MK Ultra
Really?
was just an umbrella for like so many different experiments. Like they weren't just they wanted to do RoboCats for God's sake. They didn't even train them. Why are you going to put a microchip in a cat that tries to control their mind and not train them? CIA, seriously?
Didn't think it through. But that
They also had dolphin hand jobs, but I don't think they found that out till later. They had some lady that kept giving dolphins a bunch of ecstasy and then jerking off the dolphin.
Huh.
And
where's that biopic?
And LSD.
Dolphin
they're making it, right?
Yeah, they're making. They are making one about it. She was deeply upset too because she kind of fell in love with the dolphin.
This is embarrassing.
Yeah, there's a great Dollop episode about it if you want to know more.
Okay, I don't. Matthew's character though is like very important because I think he has the face in these institutions, right? Clearly, like you mentioned the fact that like, oh, the cops will do it. They'll sort this out. Oh no, the federal government will. Like you kind of get to see that in real time. And I think the fact that he's a guy that is ultimately an institutionalist, and you get to see his sort of crushing disappointment and like realizations in real time makes it more effective. Not that it's like necessarily abjectly political in that way, but just in the way that it was in the miasma of that time. Right. And I think that makes it better than if it was like heavy handed. And I say that in a way that like, I love like 3 Days of the Condor, Parallax View, like all that, all of those like deep, like actual, like
good podcast. One of the actually
I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah.
The two podcasts that I give money to on Patreon is Kristina's Twitch, $5 a month on that, and then $5 a month on Parallax View.
Speaking of which, before we get too far off the subject, if you have an Amazon Prime account, please subscribe to our channel because that does something, and I don't quite know what.
It's free. Jeff Bezos ends up paying us. That's
Jeff
what happens.
Bezos pays us. If you do that, it doesn't cost you anything. So,
give them your Bezos bucks.
Yes.
This sounds like a pod. This sounds like a pod plot to me.
As a matter of fact, it is. Yeah, but
it's a good one.
Yeah. So
Frankie said to subscribe. By the way, look at that face.
Oh, cute.
He's so cute.
But the Matthew character, I think I think one of the reasons why his character had those thoughts and dealt with things in the way that he did is to be like a stand-in for the audience who felt that way, who maybe, and remember that like it wasn't assumed that institutions will fail us at the time. Right. There still was like some degree of a hope, misplaced such as it was by a lot of folks. Now, that's not to say that everyone felt that way. It's probably just as many Jeff Goldblum types watching this as there were Donald Sutherland types. But I think it's more effective that they had at least one person and it to be like basically the main character who's sort of like, oh, no, these guys will sort it out. Oh, these guys will sort it out. It's like, oh, yeah, no one's coming. No one's coming.
No,
that's gonna come. Do not come.
Having kind of a spectrum of the main characters, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly, in this, nobody in this movie that's one of the main characters is unlikable. You know what I mean? Like, right. I find Donald Sutherland likable. Brooke Adams is likable. Jeff Goldblum is always likable. I don't give a fuck. He could, except maybe not when he's a rapist, but
one exception that proves an otherwise sound rule. Yes.
But even Jeff Goldblum's most conspiracy-minded takes, you're still like, well, all of this is conceivable throughout the plot, and
he's just asking questions. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and I also really love the fact that like Jeff Goldblum's wife in this survives to the end, just to obviously have us realize that Donald Sutherland is also a pod person. But like by the end of it, but like it's interesting that there's kind of these layers of things, and it feels heartbreaking when Leonard Nimoy's character comes in and you see him with Jeff Goldblum's character, and they walk in together, and you're like, oh shit, like this person who was kind of the most individualist character I think throughout the movie, and kind of is I think throughout his life seems like he's a little bit like he hasn't succeeded because of that, right? Like his conspiracy mindedness, he doesn't get to read his poetry at the book reading, and he thought he would. And Leonard Nimoy's character kind of just like doms him throughout it. Like he thinks he's gonna get to go there and read his poetry. He doesn't get to do that. Leonard Nimoy throws him into a wall. Like he seems like he's kind of the most kicked around character. But like to realize that that's kind of the most individualist spirit, which makes sense that San Francisco in that sense. Like he's like this like failed poet. It's heartbreaking when he finally comes in and you realize like he's the one that's kind of not on purpose because he's just turned into a pod person, but his pod person has like stuck the knife into Donald Sutherland's character. Who Donald Sutherland's character is obviously the one that trusts the institutions the most. Refuses to even give up on the fact that institutions are to be trusted. Like he's still like, well, there has to be some institution above this institution, above this one, whether it's the DOJ, whether it's the city government, whether it's the police that are gonna like save us in the end. And he's the one that has to realize, number one, that he got like fucked over in the end by Jeff Goldblum's pod person, not Jeff Goldblum himself, but his own, like, you know, his own friend that's the least trusting of institutions got before he did. And on top of that, he realizes there is no institution that can save him.
Well, they're both like liberals. I mean, not liberals, but boomers. Like you have the liberal with Donald Sutherland, and then Jeff Goldblum's unfortunately what became of the conservative. Like they think that they're this free spirit. They think that they're free, but they're really just, you know, a pod person who's working for, you know, working against everybody.
I kind of disagree with that. I think that I don't think that that's the.
I mean, like
take away.
Yeah, I think that's what he became, though. Is you know, he started off as like he's Johnny Rotten, is what he is. He thinks he's fighting against the system, but then he becomes a Trump supporter.
Well, I think he just falls asleep and gets got. I don't think that they're trying to overall make that point. I'm
trying to make that point about Johnny Rotten and Trump.
Yeah. I forgot how old Donald Sutherland actually is. He's like what, 90 almost? He's pushing there, right?
Yeah.
Because he's done a ton of stuff. I know that it's like almost 200 films, but
yeah, he's like in his 40s in this film. I think late 30s, early 40s.
See, I don't think that they're trying to make a point about Jeff Goldblum's character the entire movie. I think that they're trying to show that there's kind of an inevitable turn towards this. Like everybody's kind of turning into a pod person. It's like I think with
86.
Wait, how old is he?
He's 86.
Damn, he's still going too. What a man.
What a man. What a man.
He feels like someone who's had a career that he's very conscious about too. Like
yeah, he did about the Getty family. The kidnapping of the grandson. He played the grandfather, and I'm like, he's out here banging whores and stuff like that. Like, you go, dude.
And then in the 90s, he was master of puppets.
Yeah.
Just being in something as I think as conscious as like JFK, like the fact that he was kind of he is Mr. X in that, and the fact that, I mean, Hunger Games I think is another is another series that I don't necessarily think, I mean, it's mainstream, but it's still like one that has a political leaning. And it's interesting that so many of these movies that Donald Sutherland seems to appear in has a political leaning that seems to, like, you know, coincide with his own. Like, they're not talking to a lot of the actors and actresses that were in other movies that he's kind of taking an interest in and saying, like, oh, well, can you explain like the politics of this? And Donald Sutherland seems to be one of those actors that is very conscious of that when he takes a role.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the greats. He's like one of the greats for like the new Hollywood like era of like the 60s and 70s, where you had the Scorseses of the world coming out with directing films and stuff that's more nitty gritty. Yeah, and didn't he do Animal House?
He did.
Yeah.
And around this time, he also did Ordinary People, like Eye of the Needle. There's a bunch of stuff he did. And then let's not forget, like
Animal House is also 1978. I'm pretty sure too, right? It's
I believe I think this came out the same year. Yeah.
He's busy.
Pretty crazy ass year.
No. Okay, get this. I'm looking at his filmography right now. He did Blood Relatives, Animal House, The Great Train Robbery, and Invasion of Body Snatchers in 1978. All came out that year.
Damn. Where's that matchup?
He's doing more projects than Renee Ruin.
Man, the cocaine in the 70s must have been good.
I gotta say, when they go into the drawer and the one guy that's the guy that's working with them, when they go into the drawer in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and they're like, oh, it's Speed. Don't worry, like the other guy, the other inspector, I think that you see take over when she's doing it in the beginning, it doesn't show up as early as Donald Sutherland wants, which he's clearly just trying to get her to show up that early to like be like, oh, well, I could get her to show up early, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of
it's like a mundane petty despot power move. Yeah,
but like, so she looks in the drawer and there's a guy with a Speed in his drawer, and like as someone that's on Adderall, like you know what I mean, like as a medication that I take regularly from a psychiatrist, it was really funny to be like, it's speed, it'll keep you up, and I'm like, yeah.
Speaking of meds, I gotta up my trazodone to 100 milligrams. This shit ain't making me fall asleep anymore.
Yeah, I don't know how you're gonna stream for 12 hours when you do that, but I don't know. I thought it was funny to every time we talk about a movie that's like everyone's like, why don't you stay awake? Why don't you stay awake? I'm like, Adderall, dude.
Yeah.
Stay awake. And then this movie, they're like, oh, don't worry, we have a drawer full of speed. And I'm like, there you go, you figured it out. That's the
Can we, having nothing to do with literally any of that, can we talk about the sound design of this movie? Because I think it's incredible. I think that the usage of sound in this movie is pretty awesome. Actually,
and there is somebody sampled the soundtrack and put it in the part where he's playing the jazz music whenever he's got the woman over for dinner, and he's playing like some jazz music. Somebody sampled part of that song and put it in something, and it's driving me nuts since I rewatched the movie, and I think it did last time I rewatched the movie. Like what is it that they sampled?
So yeah. You, audience, if you know that, write to psychologicalturd@movienightextravaganza.com and let Andy know, please.
But no, the sound design is fantastic because I love how like the beeping of the telephone becomes like part of the score and just like this driving electronic beat in the background of that scene to kind of ratchet up the tension. So yeah, and just constantly little things like that.
It fits perfectly.
Well, and I think it helps with the mood, right? Like you're saying, like it helps like maintain tension. It like is off-putting sometimes. Like it'll take something that's already like visually tense and absolutely take it somewhere else entirely. Like, oh crap! Even like little things like we played the what was the bagpipes doing? What was it, Amazing Grace? Is that what it is? Yeah. Like that's such a which
is why cops are pod people.
Right. Like when he's going and you see the ship and you're like, what is going on? It just adds to the weirdness of like, first of all, like, why would it be that song? Secondly, why would it be bagpipes? But of course, it completely makes sense at the same time.
How is this movie about pod people again?
Exactly. Well, and it's like just the weird like grindings and like the oh my god, the sounds when like the pod person's getting birthed. Oh,
makes you uncomfortable.
You call a fucking pod person. We're going through this. You don't understand. There's a pod person.
Fucking pod people. Let me tell you.
Was that Jamaican?
That was half Scottish, half Jamaican.
What the?
Yeah, man. It's the pod people. We're getting canceled now.
Invasion of the body snatchers. Oh my god!
Like pile of warmed over haggis it is.
I just remembered my fucking sleep deprived forcing you guys to watch Tom Hanks' son on Channel 5.
The entire reaction I had all the time was just shaking.
Yeah, God, that was awful. Like we forget that he has a son that's good, Colin. Okay.
He made the Tower Records documentary.
I don't forget. I see things he's in all the fucking time.
Yeah, like people also forget that Chet has a brother named Chester, I believe. So it's like, what about this other Hank's son that exists?
But
is he a pod person?
Colin is like super talented, but it doesn't have the charisma his dad has. Like,
Colin, yeah.
So like I loved him in Fargo.
Look at Kiefer Sutherland. Donald's he managed to make a name for himself. He
has his own kind of charisma too.
Yeah,
it's very different than his
Have you ever seen the video of Kiefer Sutherland jumping into the Christmas tree?
Hey, you know what? At least it's seasonally appropriate this time, as opposed to October when you push on everybody.
Have you ever seen the video?
Renee did that.
Oh, wait a minute! Wasn't he in the Lost Boys?
Have you ever seen the video of Kiefer Sutherland drunk as fuck jumping into a Christmas tree?
He's just gonna keep saying it until you answer. So you better answer him one way or the other.
No.
All right. Well, I'll be right back.
He's gonna go cue that up. So yeah, I will say this: Colin Hanks' documentary about my former place of employment many years ago, Tower Records, is well worth a watch. I think that is very interesting. It's also where I learned that Elton John is
a guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like I'm knocking him, but like there is a certain movie star charisma that some people have.
Oh, sure. No,
Yeah.
I'm not debating that
And
at all.
like there are actors, which he is, that are good, and then there are movie stars, and like, you know, and that's movie stars don't have to be good actors.
He's got TV drama charisma, which is not the same by any stretch.
It's like a
Also, too, like if it runs in the family as well, like there's all that like nepotism crap. But I mean, like Kiefer, he's got it. Like he made a name for himself for sure. And sometimes I forget that he is Donald Sutherland's son. Like I even forgot. I'm like, wait a minute, there's that family resemblance.
But yeah,
24.
And Kiefer is you know, talented in a different way than his father.
Mm-hmm.
Like they both have like his father has a kind of insane charisma.
He's eccentric in a way.
Yeah, which is why he was Hawkeye in MASH.
Whereas Kiefer Sutherland looks like he's going to torture you because he probably will.
Yeah, exactly. He's got this dark side to him, which is always great.
Yeah.
And like I just watched Young Guns recently, which is not a bad movie. It's
Emilio Estevez and Lou Diamond Phillips, right?
Yes, and Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
Where Charlie Sheen plays the sane one and Emilio Estevez plays the crazy one.
Yeah.
Kind of a switcheroo.
Exactly.
But yeah, no.
Now you had to figure it out. You didn't.
It does kind of suck that like Donald Sutherland's career though has been you know, a lot of roles that are kind of anti-militaristic, a lot of roles that are anti-intelligence state or whatever. And then Kiefer Sutherland's big role is being in fucking 24. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's literally like the Iraq War style. Like,
it's extraordinary rendition, the TV show, pretty much. Yeah.
It's like Pete Buttigieg trying to rebel against his father. This is how that's how Kiefer rebelled against his father.
Here's that Thanksgiving dinner documentary. Go ahead.
Hey, Kristina, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
It's quite amazing.
The buildup is like 20 times longer than the video, by the way.
Yeah, it's a 9-second video.
Hey, Keith, you're a pirate, man. That would explain everything. Come on.
He just like he doesn't care. He's like, I'm just gonna, you know,
hop on the Christmas tree.
I like it.
As if, are you guys familiar with Lady Gaga's Christmas song called Christmas Tree? It's full of sexual innuendos. And I'm like, that's what that moment reminds me of that song. Light me up, put me on top, let's fa la 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 la. The Christmas tree is delicious.
Yeah, that's does not sound good.
Boom.
I'm someone that I'm very open to Lady Gaga's discography. I don't like all of it, but some of it I do.
That's like early on in her, like this was like when she was still singing Cherry Cherry Boom Boom. Like this is like 2008, 2009.
You know what she was in as a teenager? She was in The Sopranos. She's there's the episode where AJ throws a bunch of shit into his high school pool, and Lady Gaga is one of the girls like egging them on in that episode.
Oh, I have an idea. Speaking of Lady Gaga, for a subathon, you can do all Ridley Scott's films because I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
Watch them all on an iPad.
Guess what, Ridley Scott? We watch all of your movies on an iPhone. Suck my dick.
Come up with something better. Like people are mad about House of Gucci, and I'm like, of course, the family's gonna be pissed.
No, what a shocking development. Who could have predicted? Anyway.
I want to start doing watch parties at some point soon because I think that could be really fun.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily I want people to like I want to do something where it's I don't want to do it for patrons. We don't have enough patrons right now, but I do want to no, but like I do want to find a way to like have to entice people into doing watch parties and not just kind of give it all away for free when we're already giving the show away for free and just using everybody with it. But I do want to do watch parties. We had a lot of fun on Give Them an Argument doing a Judas and the Black Messiah. Before Dan Simpson did a watch party for that. We did a version of that. Which, by the way, Ben and Jason weren't, because Jason Miles was on it. Ben and Jason weren't going to record. Like, we were going to have a conversation afterwards. They weren't going to record the conversation. I was like, the two of you, why the fuck wouldn't you record that conversation?
History's greatest geniuses figure out a terrible plan. Yeah.
And Ben's yeah, I guess we can jump on StreamYard. And I'm like, if you don't jump on StreamYard, I have to fucking quit, because this isn't going to be. And it was. They went at each other's throats, and Jason really gave him an argument, and it was a really fun.
Exactly. You want to enact the title of your show, Burgess? Then freaking let's go.
And then they're like, oh well, sorry, we didn't record this at all. And it's like, no, you have to record this if you're gonna have a conversation about it.
And then they didn't record
that was a great movie.
The other one
Jason's
that they did.
Wait, which?
They watched. We watched a documentary on what was it? The debate between Gore Vidal and that Schwarmy dude who did that conservative writer. They had this series of debates.
William Buckley.
Yeah, William Buckley. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because I was gonna say my joke was gonna be we don't want to record it because we don't want to take up space that could be used for Ben Burgess debating William Buckley's cousin. That was my joke.
but you missed me just going off on how much I hate Aaron Sorkin, because I realized that he thinks he's the new Gore Vidal.
Oh, imagine doing a watch party of Don't Look Up.
Oh man. Well, actually, the first time Forrest and I met was on the This Is Revolution Oscars party, and I razzed Burgess pretty hard about Trial of Chicago 7, which is pretty hilarious.
You wrote a very.
He's like, who the fuck's this guy?
Movie. Well, all right, so
I was razzing him. I love him to death.
I was actually going to reference the same thing, but with a different movie. 2 days before I met you, Burgess hadn't had a chance to watch Nomadland yet, and I had watched it 3 times to have different conversations about it by that point. And hated it by that point. The first time I watched it, I liked it. And then my opinion of it nosedived each time I watched it. So 2 days before I met you, we did a Nomadland watch party with Jeremy Salman and
me.
With you, I thought there was one more person. Was there one? I think there was one more person that talked to us about it.
But the only thing I remember is nobody was talking right at the beginning, and everybody was still getting back online. And so I'm completely don't quite have all my thoughts prepared. But Chloe Zhao is a very Chinese in the way she approaches film in that movie. And you can see influences oh my God, I'm just blanked on the guy's name.
Terrence Malick?
No, I was thinking of a Chinese director who did Red Sungrown and Hero and House of Flying Daggers and The Great Wall. And I'm remembering his worst movies now. But he also did Hang the Red Lantern. What was it? A Girl, a Gun, and a Noodle Shop.
Well, I know that Catherine Liu, who I respect a lot. I mean, I think all of us kind of do on this show. Who's she's brilliant when it comes to a lot of things, but obviously she's a film professor first. I remember she really likes her early work, but didn't like Nomadland, which I found really interesting.
Well, nobody remembers this, but I think the movie's awesome, and I still think the movie's awesome, and I think all the leftist takes are pretty much wrong, including Jason's. But that's it. I'm not going to go to war for it. I just thought it was a good movie.
Sometimes that's okay. I would love if we ever get back into a dialogue about it. Anna Kasparian had a very pro Nomadland take, and I don't know if she still holds it. So it'd be interesting if we ever have another conversation about it.
I should message her and be like, "No Man's Land, good or bad."
Well, it sucks because you're not allowed to not have a radicalized opinion on Nomadland. I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was very beautifully shot.
That's
why
I thought it was funny when we did Blue Velvet. And Rayvana's like, "I loved it," and Anna's like, "I hate it," and I'm like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah.
Well, I was happy that Rayvana kept her "I loved it" opinion, because we had we had different group chats going, and there was one with Anna Gasparian that morning saying I hated it, and I was wondering, like, you know, I didn't think she was going to, but if Ravana like kept her opinion, being like, or changed her opinion, being like, oh well, I hated it too, and I'm happy she didn't do that.
Nah, yeah.
I mean, I had fun busting in and being like, dissenting opinion. Blue Velvet's actually fucking awesome. Like, I mean, just like it was great for me to be able to come in like that. So even though I was like, oh, the whole time, it's like, all right, this is a good
we saw those comments. I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
I got off on the power of deciding when Conan could come in. Now I don't have that power anymore. So
well, I thought it played well though, because it's like it was an actual discussion, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's boring if everyone's like, hey, you know what's great about this movie? Everything. I agree. All right, cool. Nobody
listen,
cares.
I think Anna's also brilliant. Like every interaction I've had with her is something brilliant. I've never had an interaction with her where she turns around and goes, oh well, fuck that opinion, and kind of, you know what I mean? Like, so having a conversation with her and having you have a different opinion on the same topic, it was really nice to like have that be able to exist. With you guys having a conversation where she kind of realized that, like, you know, you didn't like it the first time you watched it.
I didn't.
And have her kind of see that ground in some way where it's like, well, maybe if I watch it more than once and I think about it, maybe I'll like it. That was a lot better than someone just kind of jumping on here being like, well, fuck your opinion, which it's not something I'm interested in hearing. And it's not something that I would ever expect her to say anyway. But like,
and Ravana's analysis also kind of helped Anna understand a few things. She's like, oh, wow, I didn't really think about that. That's something new, you know, for me to, you know, take in. And I'm like, I love this panel.
No,
and then I was like, yeah, I bet you're happy you hired her. Anyway, I'm glad you guys met on this stream. I feel important now. No?
Just so people know, it's Yamu Jang. It's the director I was trying to think of. He's done some phenomenal films. So you know, if you liked visually what you saw and that, check out some of his earlier works before Hero. You'll see what I'm talking about.
All right. So that was quite the derivation. Anyway, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, right?
All right. So I have one more clip, and then, you know, I share.
You're like Columbo with those clips, man. I think you said that up at the last three.
One more clip.
No, I have one more from the making of documentary. This is not from the making of documentary. This is Sigourney Weaver. I wanted to connect the two first films that we did. And this is Sigourney Weaver talking about the impact that Invasion of the Body Snatchers had on her. I can't stay on a stream too late tonight because, you know what? I feel good about this after watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I have to go to the dentist in the morning and get fucking fillings done. And it was nice to watch a movie where fucking Donald Sutherland was like, yo, dentists are fucking crazy. And I'm like, thank you. It was nice to have somebody support me on how crazy fucking dentists are. Because I've had so many bad experiences with dentists. So I'm glad I had an anti-dentist movie going on before this. I could stay on for another like half hour, but talking about, you know, different aspects of this and closing up, but you know, I have to go to bed somewhat early tonight, and it kind of sucks because dentists are fucking crazy. Fuck dentists.
Dentists be crazy, yo.
It'd be really funny if the dentist was watching the stream and was like, oh, all right, I was gonna
ended his patronship, whatever. You know, I'm talking.
Tooth left is 69.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I was terrified by Invasion of the Body Snatchers because it was about, you know, what happened to people you loved. Suddenly they had no sense of humor and couldn't communicate with you, and you couldn't communicate with them. And then it just sort of spread. So the idea of people changing, you know, the idea of any kind of thing where you can catch a virus and not be yourself anymore, or, you know, be replaced by another creature that looked and sounded just like you, but wasn't you at all. I mean, I think that's the juiciest kind of science fiction. It's so believable, really, in an odd way.
That was a short clip.
Yeah, well, no,
I was like, do I have time to go pee? No, I don't think I do. not that I would ever do such a thing, you understand. Especially not regularly. But anyway.
Yeah.
You don't pee?
You just do it in a bottle that you keep next to you.
Yo, people kept there was that one episode of Give Them an Argument where I kept having to pee and everyone knew I had to pee because I kept being like, hey, and Ben wouldn't let me, and it was like 4.5 hours into it, and people kept sending me shit where they were like, hey, here's a pee bottle you can have for when you're streaming. I was like, you know what? Fuck you. That's why I'm in charge now.
I was gonna say that's why you became the boss. A true success story. Yeah, I mean, she's kind of focusing in on like, just like the personal aspects of things, right? But like, she'd know, like she's from, one of the iconic, we talked about there, being a pre-Ripley and post-Ripley sci-fi world, right? And that's still true. So honestly, I forgot she was in that fucking piece of shit Avatar too. I fucking hate that movie. But like,
I never saw the appeal to Avatar.
I never bothered.
Titanic is a better James Cameron movie. I said it anyway.
But yeah, I mean, like it's cool that she's giving props to it because this is another one of the ones in like that pantheon of stuff that kind of changed sci-fi. I think for the better. Like made it hit a little harder and like meaningful and impactful, but not as niche. Right. And the thing is, there's meaningful and impactful sci-fi way earlier on, but I like the fact that we're covering stuff from like this era and beyond, because I think it isn't discussed culturally as much as it probably should be.
Agreed. Especially like when it comes to like that, like when it comes to films, like not many people want to cover like sci-fi films of the 70s unless it's like Ridley Scott with Alien. Because like Scorsese and The Godfather and all these other like nitty gritty films were coming out during the 70s on top of all the like exploitation films.
All movies I watched on an iPhone, by the way.
and let's just say I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that like Star Wars being a lived-in space movie, even though yes, it's a fantasy. Whatever, but it feels more
find a way to work bodies. You want to find a way to work bodies into that description. Lived in spaces.
Lived in space bodies. Yes, with those pods there. No, there are no pod people on Tatooine. You think the plants can grow there? Come on.
No, what I was
text
saying,
Bonnie. Do you want to get her in on this? We can.
What I was saying is just like the words that have taken over like pods on Twitter, where it's like my lived experience.
No, I got the reference. I just chose
bodies. No, I know. It's like
I got it.
This movie is interesting to me because I think that it's fascinating that the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers takes that like noir turn, right? Like a lot of it's like famous for kind of combining the aspects of noir filmmaking and sci-fi, which is amazing. And this movie kind of combines the 70s political thriller, which is a definition of filmmaking that really in the 70s took off because of the fact that people had such little trust in institutions. And because kind of there was this overall aestheticization almost of paranoia. And like, this feeling that something was wrong, society is deeply flawed. Like these ideas that there's a myriad of reasons, I think, in filmmaking why it would have had to be a lot more muted in the past. One of them, of course, is the fact that this is a decade after the Hays Code, where you couldn't actually say, hey, I don't trust institutions in America. When
the Hays Code, aka our sponsor, for as much as we fucking mention it in this show. Sponsored by the Hays Code.
Sponsored by the Golden Age of Hollywood. The Golden Age of
Hollywood. You couldn't even say pregnant in like films or TV shows.
Pregnant. You could
let alone
you could sneak it in and have your aliens just say pregnant, and then you're like, oh, I guess no, but I don't know why your wording of pregnant just made me think of
like 3 more syllables too when she does it.
Oh God.
No, but so I think that this movie kind of combines two genres that are incredibly kind of like like within this decade have kind of taken off, which is like the political thriller and sci-fi, which sci-fi works in any decade really, but having it kind of be like this combined thing, like neo-noir is kind of the same way, right? Like throughout the decade of the 70s, neo-noir takes off because of this lack of trust in institutions. And it's interesting to kind of have that aspect of it permeate this movie for very good reasons. But I think that you could remake Invasion of the Body Snatchers as many times as you want, and
they have,
as long as
boy have they, yeah. But I was gonna hold off that time, but yeah.
As long as you have something to say about the culture of the time you're living in, as long as you have something to say about as long as you can kind of permeate a secondary and tertiary genre into it, where it's you can kind of continue to create a different kind of film, and everyone could say, well, you're actually trying to say something different with the pod people. You're trying to say something different with this aspect of paranoia, instead of kind of making the same point over and over again. And I kind of find that a fascinating part of this.
Now watch they remake it. It's about TikTok now, right?
But everybody's joining the pod app.
It could be. Oh God, what was that one movie? I forgot. But it's with a TikTok filter, you can see who are really the pod people with the TikTok filter.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Hollywood, where's our money? God damn it!
The screech.
Forrest, did you play the clip of the of them talking about the lighting of the movie?
I didn't.
Okay. I found a clip, and I can't believe I didn't share it with anybody, or I saw it at some point. But they were discussing, God, what's wrong with me?
Kind of odd.
This is like the defense attorney bringing in evidence at the last minute of the trial. By
yes.
the way. Yeah.
But no, they were actually discussed. The neo noir was actually a very conscious decision on the filmmakers, because they wanted to make a noir. So they thought how to do it with color and shadow, and you can really see that with the shadow. Maybe not so much with the color, but that's okay. That's fine. I think the color works.
Oh, is it good? I'm glad you think so.
They say. Well, let me tell you. See, all of a sudden I was walking down the street and they were telling me about these goddamn aliens. Do I believe it? I don't know.
but you could definitely see them thinking about the way they filmed the shadow and the light and capturing light on people's faces. It really is a noir in that respect.
Yeah, and that is my favorite. So I had a really funny interaction that I didn't talk about during Nightmare Alley, and I probably should have. But I watched Nightmare Alley at my grandma's house. I mean, I streamed from there too. And, since it's black and white, that movie did some really amazing things with shadow, lighting, having different But then I was watching it the second time or the third time, and I pointed that out. And my grandma was like, "What are you talking about?" And I realized that my mom, my grandma, and I had this conversation about how people maybe that had black and white films for a lot of their life, because she's 90, people that had black and white films for a good portion of their life maybe don't recognize the aestheticization of shadow and lighting. And she's also not someone that thinks deeply about film, but having that as kind of the standard definition of film, the standard colorization of film, it was interesting because she didn't seem to have ever recognized that maybe shadow and lighting could be used in that way. And for someone who sees black and white filmmaking and thinks well, this isn't, these are older films and these are films that are trying to say something different because the actual aesthetics of the film are different. It was interesting to have that kind of conversation with her. I'd be like, well, when they have shadow and lighting and stuff in the noir film, that kind of is for a reason, and it's very purposeful, and the aesthetics of it are there for a very conscious reason. And I do feel that way about this film too. But
people don't think that lighting and shadows and all that is important, and I'm like, it is.
Yeah. That's part. 2 words: Roger Deakins. I mean,
spaces are important. Bodies, living experience,
pods,
self-care,
plants, mud baths, bagpipes.
Is it letterbox time or what? What are we doing here?
Yeah, I guess it's letterbox time. Let me tell you though.
Let's talk about my lived-in experience of. Is it lived-in or lived experience? Lived experience, right? Yeah. See, this is how much I give a shit. I'm like, I don't know. What the fuck do they say? It doesn't matter. That's what we're doing.
Well, here's the thing.
Here's the thing, people.
All right, so we do a segment. We've reached out to them, have not heard back, but we do a segment.
Throwing the shade already. All right.
Yeah, we're gonna burn it all down. Anyway, we do a segment called Letterbox One-Liners. We let Conan loose. We really let him show the full shininess of his jackets. We let him shine. Everything. Letterbox is a social media app where you can review films. You have a chance, as Conan likes to say, the democratization of film reviewing. The people get a chance for once to really decide which films are good, which films you should watch, and our opinions on them. So Letterboxd, a big part of it is people do these one-line film reviews, and Conan finds the best ones. And you know what? If you slip him $100 on the table, I think he might pick yours.
Gotta get paid on this show somehow. Yeah, like the pithiest,
I'm a
funniest.
socialist that doesn't pay their employees.
Right.
Anyway.
Andy and I are gonna go on strike.
Yes.
Oh, you guys wanna form a union? Good luck getting paid.
Next thing you know, he's got all the cast of These Are Bad Movies as his staff. Anyway.
Never that. But I think movies are good, so I could never have them be the staff.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
it would fuck everything up for me.
Yeah, they don't like Alien. Like, what the hell?
I think they do like Alien. They're pigeonholed. They're pigeonholed into saying that everything is a bad movie because we've turned them into a meme.
They've typecast themselves.
Yeah. Oh, are they bad movies? Is there something problematic about them? Really? You guys found something problematic in a movie from 1979? Wow. I am quite impressed. Anyway, here is review number 1.
Maybe he's become a Republican. That's
I also really like that whole scene because he's like, well, you can make sure he's not gay, he's not a Republican.
Yeah.
Or wasn't it like he didn't catch the gay or something like that?
No, he didn't say he didn't catch the gay. He just was like, you could really just knock things off. He doesn't have a social disease, which is reminded me of West Side Story.
No, but like what he did say
Maybe
something.
he's got a social disease.
Yeah.
Then take him to a social worker.
He's not Pete Buttigieg, in other words.
Powerful tweed movie.
It
Emma
is.
Stefanski. There's a lot of tweed energy in this. That's right.
I'm also happy I didn't do it on purpose knowing that this is going to be one of the reviews, but I am happy that I picked this image because they got like straight up tweed in the background.
Tweed illustration.
There you go.
If it was me, it just would have been his weird glove that I still don't understand what it is for. But yeah.
Tweed a go-go.
I love capers. Rough man there.
I'm disappointed that no one had like a Ratatouille reference because they bring out the rat and the rat's just dead and they're walking out with it. He's like, I got it. And I was like, oh man, that.
Patton Oswalt, no! What a great time to fall asleep. That's envy.
Oh, my favorite.
That is one of the things. It's like everybody's like,
my face can only handle so much.
Oh no, my Adderall script ran out.
The power of cinema is me having a crush on a health inspector. I don't know how you say this username name.
This movie also purposely, I mean, maybe not, but like there's the and I've talked about this, but like there's the aspect of like the New Left that kind of took place where it was like a consumerist obsession, right? Which should take place because businesses are kind of selling people things that can kill them constantly. But like the idea of like kind of like the Ralph Nader consumerist revolution, instead of being a class revolution, it's like a revolution based on let's try to save consumers. And Nixon and Ford and Reagan all absolutely reject that as a concept. So it's funny to have like a health inspector who's kind of who would be the one kind of pushing OSHA coming out, during the 70s as a as your main character.
Yep. I'm giving all the houseplants I bought during the pandemic some serious side eye right now. Thank you, Dark.
Yeah.
Mine were a cactus and an aloe plant, which are both still alive and upstairs, but like, I was giving them side eye already.
My plants are plastic, so I think I'm good.
Oh, to be screamed in the face by Veronica Cartwright.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum at his sexiest. A man who hates the cops.
The FBI is in on it.
This happened to my cousin one time. He's better now, though. Matt Burns.
That's the best one. That is hands down.
Oh boy.
Makes you think twice about stopping to smell the roses.
Oh my god, that was a good one too.
I really like how ridiculous Jeff Goldblum like seems to take it when they're like, oh, it's a plant, and he's like, oh yeah, like aliens came on a plant, and it's like, dude, you've been the one that's most crazy about conspiracy theories the entire movie.
It's the one thing he shits on. Like everything else is fair game. He's like, come on, plants. You know. And
Yeah.
Like, why is that the thing, dude?
There's stuff in the water that turns the frogs gay.
But it's not a plant.
Alex Jones, Body Snatchers.
Lizard people.
We're all pod people.
Can't go to sleep.
Alex Jones would be Leonard Nimoy's character, where he's broadcasting shit the entire movie about other conspiracy theories. Meanwhile, he's the one turning everyone into pod people. Like that would be a modern rendition of this movie. Anyway, I'm gonna go now to final thoughts quickly. You know, because I do have to go to sleep and get my teeth drilled, and you know, it's gonna fucking suck. So, starting with Kristina.
So, okay. Anyway, I love this film. Everything about it, cinematography, the underlying political messaging. Donald Sutherland is at his hottest in this film, and as this is one of the cases where a remake could actually be retooled, bring something fresh and innovative. And I feel like this version is a lot more famous because of all those things. I mean, there's been so many references to it in pop culture. It stands the test of time. They've tried doing sequels.
I heard pod culture.
Pod culture. But yeah, they try doing sequels and remakes, and it can't be done. It's either this version or the 1956 version. So I mean, I give it an 11 out of 10.
All right, Conan.
Hey, great film. You know, are there a few pacing issues? Yeah, kinda. Does it do a lot? Absolutely. Is it, oh my god, completely freaky AF? You fucking better believe it. Like this movie is fantastic, and it's something that I've seen a lot over the years, and it still gets to you. And like I said, I've been to like 3 times. Like the scenes of like the pod birthing, like so gross. Like gross, and all with practical effects. And like, what a great thing to still be grossed out by that as like a grown ass man, to be like, Sound design's incredible. Cinematography is great. You know, Kristina hit on an important point that like we still talk about, like, you know, oh, it's a so-so, the pod people, haha, to this day in the popular lexicon. And you know, the 50s movie was good and it's popular, but it's because of this movie that we think of it that way. So it's important to culture. And I'm really glad we actually covered it for this month, because I think it's important to the genre of sci-fi as well, because it kind of helped, if not immediately be the first movie to do it, but to have the really heavy undercurrent of political vibes that again resonate and make the movie itself, which is already good, kind of hit a little harder because of that. And also, Leonard Nimoy's got a weird glove, and please at me and tell me what that's all about, because I don't know what that is.
All right, Andy.
Well, there's so much to say about this movie because it is an absolute all-time great. I know, I remember growing up in the 80s, and a lot of people overanalyzed the original one and ignored this one. And so, like, I feel like this movie hasn't quite gotten its due compared to the original. Because there is a lot to really be able to pull out of this movie, because it is such a great remake. And yeah, the shadow, the cinematography, the just like I said, the from the get-go, from the opening scene, like just weird stuff's happening already. And so like, you know, you can see like parallel pod people movies that are happening at the same time, but you don't actually know what those stories are. It almost reminds me of when I was a kid seeing the episodes of Automan and Manimal, where Automan's just in the background of Manimal, and but they have the same scene in
Manimal
no, Manimal. No, Manimal, man. And then so like they had the same. They're at the same place at the same time, doing like different episodes, and they're just in the background of each other's scenes, and it's like one of the best weeks of television of 1982. This movie kind of has that kind of feeling like there's every single person you see on screen has a story. It's not like just extras going about their business. Like there is another group of people experiencing something very similar to this that's going on, and it's just they're running around in the background doing it, and you don't know what that story is. It's great because it adds so much to this movie. It helps the paranoia because you don't know if it's actually like, you know, is this actually another group of people, or is this somebody, you know, trying to catch a train? You know, he missed the trolley. He's late for work. You know, what is happening here? And I don't think that we touched really on that aspect too much, but I do just want to shout out like all the extras in the movie, you know, did a phenomenal job making this, like elevating this film. You know, from Robert Duvall and the Swings to you know, everybody at the end there.
Yeah. All the extras in the 415. Give me a shout. Let me know you're alive.
Oh man. What I'll say is
Side of